Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have a card showing you 3 ways to use some dollar store bingo markers. This card's inspired by the newest Mama Elephant and Me challenge with an inspiration photo and the Freshly Made Sketches brand new sketch. Since I started with the Mama Elephant challenge, I was thinking about this Around We Go stamp set from Mama Elephant because the fireworks remind me of the top of the boxes in the inspiration photo. And so since I wanted to use the fireworks, I kind of started stamping things out on pieces of scrap paper to think about how I could use them. And you saw those before, so now I'm moving on to just trimming out the pieces to about the same size as I did for the scrap pieces. So I have a 3x4 for the fireworks panel, a 2x3 for the swing set panel, and a 3¼ by 2½ for the sentiment panel. So now I'm going to show you stamping the fireworks. I'm going to use the larger firework from this set and Archival Jet Black ink from Ranger because it's a waterproof ink, and working with the daubers I think it would be better to have a waterproof ink because they are water soluble. And so I started by just kind of randomly stamping them similar to the way that I stamped them on my scrap piece, just so that I knew that I would like it. This idea for adding color to the center of the firework is actually something that I learned at the Mama Elephant New York City workshop. And at the workshop they showed you using the Hero Arts daubers, like these here, but those are super expensive, like $7 a bottle. So I thought about another way that I could create a similar effect, and I actually used bingo markers in my kindergarten classroom, and when I was using them one day I was like, oh, these are just like the Hero Arts daubers in some ways, and so I wonder if I could do some similar things with them. So you take the marker cap off and you just want to tap it off to the side a couple times to make sure that it's flowing nicely, and then just touch it to the center of the firework. Very simple and easy. You can clean off your work surface in between because otherwise it'll get all over your other little pieces. So now I'm moving on to stamping the swing set. I don't really know what you would call that. I guess I always called it the swing ride when we went to Great Adventure as a child. So I'm stamping it in the middle. It's kind of a little splotchy. I didn't really like that, so I'm just going to turn it over and stamp it again, see if I can get a little bit cleaner of an impression. Next I want to cut the banner into the bottom of it and then add the stitched lines around the edges. So when I cut a banner, I like to cut down the middle. I'm sure you see a lot of other crafty individuals do the same thing. I think it just gives it a little bit straighter of a look, especially on a wide panel like this. So then I take the scissor and trim from the sides, and now I'm just taking a thin black pen and putting little dash lines around it for that sort of faux stitching effect. I think it just adds a little bit of interest to this panel because otherwise it's just a panel with one little stamped image. I'm not very good at the clean and simple, so I usually wind up adding a little more detail than maybe even is necessary. So anyway, I'm now stamping the sentiment on the banner, and you'll see that I do the same technique to cut the banner out. I actually trim it up a little bit because it's kind of long there, and then just trim in from the sides after cutting down the center. Very simple and easy. So now I want to move on with putting all of the elements together, but the bingo daubers are still a little wet, and so I'm just hitting it with the heat gun. You see it kind of flies off the table over there, so you could use a tweezer to keep it down. You can see I decided to mount everything on some black cardstock, so I just trimmed out pieces of black cardstock 1/4 inch bigger and then glued it down and trimmed out the banner pieces. So next I want to show you how we're going to make the background paper for the final card. This is another way you can use those dollar store bingo markers. You could use the Hero Arts daubers if you have them, but again, I prefer the cheaper way of using the bingo markers. So I'm going to start with the orange because it's the lighter color, and then I'm just going to be kind of drawing on some stripes. It's a little bit trickier to draw this when there's the camera in between me and where I'm working, so you'll see mine looks a little bit sloppier this time as I do it on camera, but if you are doing it without the camera in the way, you'll have plenty of control and you can draw relatively straight lines through. But if they're not, it doesn't matter. You're trying to create a handmade look, so don't stress too much about perfection on this aspect. I do suggest wiping off your mat in between the two colors and also drying it with a heat gun in between the two colors so that you don't experience any running or bleeding and splotching and all that kind of stuff. It's just cleaner that way. And so after I've dried the orange, I'm going to lay down the blue because it's the darker color, and that way if there's overlap, I think that will probably wind up looking better than if there was overlap with the orange. And so just filling in all of the extra spaces. It allows you to kind of smooth out your lines a little bit. You also see I have to touch the paper to hold it down at parts, which is another good reason to make sure that it's completely dry in between. And then you can just spray with a mister to wipe off your mat because the bingo markers are water soluble, as I mentioned before. I wind up deciding that I don't really like it all flat on there, and so I actually want to use a little bit of dimensional adhesive to pop up the card. I use the thin 3M dimensional adhesive because a lot of my cards go to Operation Right Home and they need really thin cards so that they're easy to mail. And I like to use a good amount of foam adhesive so that way, even if the cards get a little bit beat up in all the different mailings, it'll still look great in the end. So now I want to add one last little element, which is this little wood veneer heart, and this is the last way I'm showing you today how to use the bingo markers, which is to simply color a wood veneer by dabbing onto the small wood veneer. And then I'm going to hit it quickly with a heat gun so that way I can glue it onto the card right away. I actually had to use my tweezers to hold it down because otherwise the heat gun was just blowing it all over the place. So now I'm going to use some glossy accents to adhere the heart. I actually like to put the glossy accents onto the mat and then dip a small element into them because that way it's not so much of a glob of glue, but then some did leak out, so I just used my scissors to kind of scrape it away. So that's it for my video today. I hope you enjoyed discovering some new ways to use bingo markers and that you don't have to get the expensive Hero Arts daubers. You can go with the bingo markers instead and still get a great look. Thank you for watching today. You can visit me at my blog at blog.jesscrafts.com. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel to see more. And I'm going to list some of the products in the description below.